This is Joe Barton sitting in for Paula Gloria and further down the rabbit hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. And tonight I have with me Karen Hudes, which I've had before, and Anthony Shields is with us, and we're going to cover some more stuff on the international banks and what's going on with the World Bank. And I'd like to thank you for coming again, Karen, and thank you, Anthony, for being here. And Anthony, you're new to us. Could you tell us a little about your story? What brings you here to us, and what involvement did you have with the World Bank?
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'd like to start off by saying that I joined the bank in '87 after finishing an MBA at Columbia Business School. And prior to that, I'd worked for Pricewaterhouse in New York City, and also as an external auditor on major clients in New York City. And I also worked with Chemical Bank, which is now Chase, on internal audit. So I have a very strong background in commercial audit and also banking. And I did an MBA at Columbia Business School and then joined the bank in '87. I worked in the controllers department of the World Bank and also worked in IFC's controllers department as a accounting policy specialist, a person who deals with accounting policy issues, particularly those coming from out of the FASB and International Accounting Standards boards. And then I joined the IFC Africa department, Sub-Saharan Africa department in East and Southern Africa, where I worked there from about '91 to 2001. I took a leave of absence and came back and was like given 6 months to find a job and didn't quite work out, and that's when I left the bank. There's a lot of stories in between all of that, but since I've left the bank, I have continued to look for jobs in the field of banking, accounting, and finance, and have not been able to find a job in that area. Even at the World Bank and IFC, I applied to a number of positions, even visited, speak with them, and I have people there that I talk to, and to get and even at the bank where I speak to get a sense of what's happening. Well, the story is that somehow, while I was still at the bank, working at the bank around 96 to 97, around those years, someone entered the sealed confidential records of Columbia University registrar. I use the word someone, but let's put it this way. My records at Columbia University registrar was altered. Altered meaning not changed because of typo or error, but actually altered. And what they did, they changed my social security number at the registrar at Columbia University. Now, Columbia University told me that this happened when I was at a bank around 1997. I didn't discover this until 2008. I had done a small piece of work for Robert Half, a major recruiter, and I disengaged from that audit. I was working on mortgage-backed securities, and it had issues to dealing with audit scope, which I didn't agree with, so I disengaged. I was only on the assignment for about 2 months. So I kept pressing Robert Half for another assignment. And then they brought me in, because I was really pressing them about a year later and said, "You don't have an MBA." I said, "I don't have an MBA. What do you mean by that?" The long and short of that short story is that I then spoke to people at Columbia Business School and at Columbia University, and had to talk to National Student Clearinghouse, Choice Point, and found out that they altered my social security number on my transcript. So even though I was an alumni, receiving information from the Alumni Association, attending alumni events, networking with alumni, there was no way for me to really know that the university was telling everybody that I never came to the school. So that is in part affected me since leaving the World Bank in '01.
Why do you think all this was happening to you?
Well, I think learning from Karen, I'm seeing a broader picture than I saw even when I was there. And I was involved in very controversial, not really controversial, but testing accounting policy issues where I did some innovative stuff to get IFC their building that they now occupy at 21st and Penn by merging accounting policies and making it work so that both parties could agree. And what this did was, move things forward. I was also involved in project finance in Africa department, so I got the good gambit of what goes on there, and played a major role too in doing a lot of transactions. But what exactly caused this, or is there a link? These are not questions that I can fully understand and fully give a clear answer to. But the impact has been quite severe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you think that a lot of this happened to you because of retaliation for what you might have done?
I believe that there's an element of retaliation there, because I know, for example, that the first project I was on involved a high level of problems or corruption or something to that effect. And so what happened, I know that to some degree that might have affected, promotions there. So that never really transpired the way it ought to afterwards. I would say maybe for about 8 or 9 years in the same position after doing like 4-grade increase within the first 4 years. So what happened is that when I left, when I left, you're not quite sure, given your performance, given the things you've accomplished there. I think I played a major role in the countries that I worked in bringing about the economic transformation that was, desired at the time, and so one would expect that with these accomplishments and skills and assets that you bring to the market, that, you would have been hired in 2 seconds. I mean, that was my expectation. That never quite happened, so as I said, I'm learning, from Karen, because she has great expertise in what she brings to the table and in some of the issues that she has been discussing.
And Karen, it's really good to have you back. I actually have some questions that I would like to ask Karen that I wrote down. With the banking system contributing to the politicians' campaigns and the banking system controlling the media, how do you think we can bring about change when the corruption is so pervasive? What do you think of that?
Well, let me tie your question in with really the very disturbing information that we've just gotten from Anthony.
Yeah.
How does a university change somebody's records?
I prefer the word altered because that's what I was told. I said,
how can it be erased that you had a degree?
I was told we thought it was an error, and so we expected to find some administrative explanation, but we found out that your Social Security was altered.
This is outrageous.
Yeah.
They've stolen his life from him. Here he is, he's been very modest. He hasn't explained just how good an auditor he is and the skill set that he has, that he can do things that are really incredible. And then he gets rewarded for being conscientious and doing his job the way it's supposed to be done. They wanted him to take shortcuts, and it didn't happen, so they punished him. And I have to say that this is absolutely consistent. Let me tell you about the Institutional Integrity Department at the World Bank.
Okay.
Because this is really quite profound. Paul Volcker came in to do an audit of something called the Institutional Integrity Department. Now, that is I guess the technical word is misnomer, because that department had no institutional integrity. What happened? I won't rehash the story that I was telling, but in any event, the Dutch government asked the World Bank Audit Committee to look into all of the corruption that I had reported. That was in 2005. So the chairman of the audit committee at that point was Pierre Duquesne from France. And Pierre Duquesne's response was to ask for an investigation of the Institutional Integrity Department. So Paul Volcker came in. And what happened was there were 16 people who worked in the Institutional Integrity Department, and they were they had treatment very consistent to what Anthony has just told you. And they they ended up actually getting compensated, because it turned out that every time the Institutional Integrity Department officers tried to explain what was going on during this inquiry by Paul Volcker, they were punished. So, well, let me tell the whole story with all of the words. There's a group called the Government Accountability Project. They like to represent themselves as if they're helping whistleblowers. I had gone to them because that's what I thought they did. They withdrew from my case one day before a filing deadline in the administrative tribunal, which is where the staff members are required to go. They also had gotten information from Senator Lugar that they hadn't bothered to tell me about. You know, I was very surprised when I found this out. It turns out that all of the serious whistleblowers that I'm working with have had serious problems with the Government Accountability Project, as if they're not to be representing whistleblowers. They're, every now and it's like a Venus flytrap. Every now and then they'll do something for somebody, so you think it's really representing whistleblowers. And then when you get a really serious case, it turns out, no.
They sabotage it.
That's right. And by the way, I have to say the same exact thing, unfortunately, for the American Civil Liberties Union. I call these organizations gatekeeper organizations. They don't really do what they say they're supposed to be doing. It's a very sad thing, but that's the way it is. But anyway, so what happened with the case of the Institutional Integrity Department and these people that were trying to get Paul Volcker to do an honest report? Well, the Government Accountability Project wrote an article about this. It's really quite shocking. And then they pulled the article. It's no longer on the internet. That's who the Government Accountability Project is.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. We're talking about such corruption among these people. It just amazes me, even that people like you are speaking out and bringing it out. But I really would like to know what you think about it's so pervasive, the corruption. How can we, the people, bring about a change when the courts, the politicians are all in the pockets of these criminals in the World Bank?
Okay. Let's start out by saying where the criminals are and who they are, because it's true, there are criminals in the World Bank, but it is not necessarily the entire World Bank. You see there's
right.
a group of whistleblowers, dedicated
right.
whistleblowers, yeah? And so what you have, it's kind of like, think of a big bus, and somebody gets in and hijacks the bus and turns it around and starts running over people and goes in the wrong direction. Is it the fault of the bus? Well, you can say, yes, it is, but the fact of the matter is we need to have a place for all of the countries of the world to sit down and discuss things to prevent a war. That's why
right.
the World Bank was created. And so if you get, the question is, can we get this crazy bus driver out of the seat of the bus?
Right.
And can we start driving it ourselves?
Right.
And what does it take? And here's the important question. How do you know, how are the people in the world going to know whether the bus driver is driving the bus for them or whether the bus driver is going the wrong way, careening down the street? And one of the really good things about the World Bank is they do train you how to do a good project. They also don't necessarily do a good project, like you were talking about with Perkins, that they're creating bad projects. What I found out was it was kind of perverse. If you had a country which had a strong, honest, good government, then you were going to get a good project there. Because if somebody came there with a bad project, they would just send it, they would send that team home, and they would wait until there was a good team. Whereas if you were a country that really needed the help, you couldn't necessarily recognize that that team wasn't very strong. And so you would just have to take whatever you could get. And so the projects that would rip off the vulnerable countries, that's what you would have. But if it was a country that had a capability, it was going to get a good project. I mean, that's exactly what you would want, is you would want good projects across the board. But unfortunately, if you had a bus where the bus driver was driving the wrong way down the street, they were just going to do whatever, they were going to do whatever could be tolerated. And so that's the answer to your question. If we, the people, can recognize when a bus is going the wrong way down the street, we'll be able to defend ourselves. And so here is how you can recognize it. If the whistleblowers are being silenced, or if the whistleblowers are being listened to, that's how you know whether the bus is going the right way or the wrong way.
Right.
And then the question is, how do you know whether it's a real whistleblower or a fake whistleblower? That I can't help you there, people. You've got to start doing some thinking for yourself. But if you've got to start doing some thinking for yourself. But it stands to reason. It stands to reason that if somebody is telling you, like the World Bank whistleblowers are telling you, that you're paying interest on your debt and you don't need to, this is not rocket science. You don't have to have the Federal Reserve. You don't have to pay interest on your debt. And especially not when there's gold in the world that's sitting there earmarked for you. I mean, this is not difficult. You say, yes, I would like that. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Well, for the audience out there, what can the little person, the common person out in the world do to help get it straightened out? There's a lot of people out there, who listen to this show who would like to do something, but they don't know what to do. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I'll tell you where we are right now. And it's exactly what I said to Judge Traxler just before the World Bank meeting in April. And I never did finish the story about my arrest. So let me tell you how that happened.
Okay.
Okay.
But then let my audience know what they can do to help.
It's very simple. Stick with the problem. Follow it. Write to people. Because it's a huge problem and it has an easy solution. Because where we are right now is we're at a crossroads. We can follow the rule of law and we can join the rest of the nations of the world. And I mean, that's an easy thing. You're given that choice and you simply say, yes, I'll take it. That's where we are. Because the whistleblowers, all of us, there's a whole slew of us, have been working together with all of the law-abiding countries of the world to get us where we are. So let me explain what happened when I was arrested. Because, I'm a whistleblower, but I'm also a special whistleblower. I'm the lawyer who's been sitting inside this institution that was created to prevent war. And I had a political scientist come to me with a tool that came from the Defense Department to prevent wars. That's what he had, the power transition model. So what I did was I saw what he gave me. I said, this is the most incredible thing. It's telling the world how to avoid World War III. So let's avoid World War III. And that's what I am. I'm working with this because if you read the article that he wrote, and I'll give you the link to that, it's Jacek Kugler. And if you want to find the article, what you have to do is you have to Google my name, Hudes, Hudes, and then Google the name of a German journalist who wrote an article. He interviewed me. His last name is Schall, Schall. So if you Google those two, Hudes, Hudes, and Schall, Schall. You'll find this article, and it's footnote 3, where he's talking about this, describing the group that has grabbed up the power of the world, and it's footnotes 7, 8, and 10 that describes this power transition model. And what that model says is it says that if one country, just one country, starts to push for rule of law, the whole world will get rule of law. Let me tell you who that country is. It's the Parliament of the United Kingdom and the European Parliament, because I've had my statement there 3 times. The reason I got my statement there is because of Elaine Colville, Scottish, and she has been just really fantastic. She has been working so hard. She's been holding single-handedly almost, all of her government to account. It's phenomenal what she's done. Anyway, so the two of us teamed up, and we got the statement up in the UK Parliament. And when that happened, that's when Jacek Kugler came back. He wasn't sure we were going to get that far, but because of Elaine and I teaming up. And then Elaine told me again a little while ago when I wasn't getting any publicity. She said, why don't you go and look at the whistleblowers at the Securities and Exchange Commission? And I did. Matt Taibbi had written a series of articles on that. And that was what led me to Mark Nowitzki. And if you've ever heard of a dot connector, you want to get to know Mark Nowitzki.
Can you hook me up with these people? I'll bring them on and put them on for our audience.
Absolutely. Delighted
I would love
to
bring all these people on, because my job is to educate the American people with the stuff that the regular news and media and CBS and ABC is not giving the American people. So me and Paul are dedicated to trying to get the truth out to the American people, and anybody who has it, we'll put them on.
Well, absolutely. You'll love to meet these people. I mean, some of them I haven't actually met. Some of them I just have been talking to for a long time. But what happens
give
is...
them my phone number, because you have it,
yes,
and tell them if they want to come on, just hook up with me and we'll get them on.
Will do. Mark is in Minneapolis, so he's, but yeah, we've got to find a way to get him here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so when you've got whistleblowers who, from inside their organizations, have seen things going the wrong way, and they bring it out, that's when people have to protect them. And in the United States, we haven't done such a brilliant job. I mean, look at what's going on with Manning. I mean, this is...
Yeah, outrageous.
So... And one of the things that we have to do is, we have to be really, we have to do our job as citizens and get ourselves informed. And you're not going to be informed by turning on the television set and sitting back and expecting that the news broadcaster is going to tell you what you need to know. I mean, how many of you, you're watching this broadcast that Paula and Joe are bringing you, but most of the other Americans haven't heard any of this.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely right in the very center of what's going to make this country great or what's going to make it fail. Because if we don't have a strong dollar, we're going to become a third-rate nation, and in very short order.
Yeah. Well, I'm open for you to tell us more.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you know that we're in a country that needs to get our act together. Yes? Mortgages, with the MERS signing, the robo-signing.
Right.
How about the fact that your tax dollars are going to the Federal Reserve, and from there they're going...
Out of the country?
They're going to the Crown, and then from there... 2/3 of your taxes are going to the Vatican. This is not a country that's going to stay at the top. It's not going to stay as a leader very much longer. And so what's happening with dollars is that they're not going to be the international reserve currency. And some people say, well, why don't we have an international system where you don't have I mean, what it means when you're an international reserve currency is that the bankers, don't forget they're private bankers, they print the dollars, and the rest of the world has to pay. They don't just get to print dollars for international currency. And so what was going on in Egypt, where the people were out in the streets, it's because the price of food, they couldn't feed their families anymore. That's why they were out in the streets. Let me focus on Egypt for a little bit.
Sure.
Because it was actually Ibrahim Shihada who brought me to the World Bank. He was the general counsel for a number of years. Before he came to the World Bank, he was the general counsel for OPIC. He was an Egyptian, yeah? And what's going on in Egypt right now? What's going on is that the United States is telling Egypt that their people are out in the streets. They've gone through several iterations of governments that, it's a real problem for the world when you have all of this unrest. And why do we have this unrest? How did this all happen? It happened because of our weak currency. That was one of the things that happened, but it also happened because their people, at one point, the New York Times ran an article, their people in Parliament were having a debate about the Nile. Now, this is an important thing. If you want to get the Egyptians' attention, you talk about the Nile. This is their river. This is very central to their entire country. What happened was their discussion about the Nile, their parliamentarians' discussion about the Nile, was being taped. They didn't know this. And then that was broadcast. The tape was put out on, I don't think it was YouTube. Well, actually, yes, it was YouTube. And they were, the parliamentarians, talking about something that was in their national security interest. And I think it had to do, I don't remember the exact discussion, but it had to do with Sudan. And the people who were patriotic were told that they were going to be humiliated in public because they were also saying some, don't be shocked, they were saying some uncomplimentary things about the United States. Why should they say uncomplimentary things? By the way, I am very patriotic because I am fighting for the economic welfare of this country. We need a strong currency. But these people, these patriotic members of parliament in Egypt, were being attacked. And now they're told, the Egyptians are told, that they are not going to get aid from the United States. Now, there are a lot of people that are, they say we shouldn't give any economic aid at all. But the fact of the matter is that if the United States wants to remain an important leader, we're not giving the amount of aid that most other countries are giving. If you look at the per capita amount of aid that we're giving, it is very, very low. And if you look at the welfare of the people of this planet, if you want to export items, you have to have markets. If people don't have enough money to live, then they certainly don't have enough money to import. I used to work at the Export-Import Bank before I came to the World Bank. That pays for, finances U.S. exports. The World Bank, when it finances projects, it has financed, in 10 years, it's financed more than $1 billion worth of exports for the United States. And people might say, well, what's $1 billion? I can tell you that really does count. It creates jobs. If we want jobs in the United States, we have got to be mindful of the fact that the world doesn't end at our border, because jobs are if you look at in an economy, how many jobs do we have in our own neighborhoods? How many jobs do we create? There are ways to create jobs, but if you try to limit your economy to your border, you're not going to be creating very many jobs. That's just in the nature of the way our economies. If you turn on the internet, you see how interconnected we are as a world. So we have got to become world citizens. But I'm not saying that we should have our country run from outside, which is what we have right now, by the way. People don't know it, but that's what we have. When the election, the presidential election, it turned out, you know, all those commercials that we were having, those were financed from outside the country. And when we had the debate, the presidential debate, it turned out that the way that debate was set up with the presidential debate organization, they kicked out the League of Women Voters who used to try to run an honest debate. I went to CBS and I asked them to talk about the corruption that we've been reporting. They weren't going to do that because they didn't want they wanted to keep the American people dumb. That's what our mainstream media is all about. It's keep them dumb. Don't give them the information they need. That's what happens in our schools. Don't give the young children the ability to think.
Right.
Make sure that they're going to be handicapped so that they won't think. It's no accident that if you look at the ranking of the children, we're undereducating our citizens to keep them from finding out everything that we're trying to tell them.
Yeah, well, we've also done shows about that, about how they're dumbing down America. I want to try to give you as much chance to talk, because me and Paula, we've talked about a lot of these same subjects, and you being an authority on it, here's a place for you to just put the information out. We're here, that's what we're here to do.
Well, let's start from the very beginning, which is the War of Independence. I'm going to tell you what I found out. I didn't know this in the beginning, but I can give you documentation to support everything I'm telling you. People say that we won the War of Independence, but it turns out that we did not win the War of Independence, that the Treaty of Paris that was negotiated for us, why, if we won the war, did we end up having to pay war reparations?
Right.
Which we did. And so the money has been leaving our country without us really knowing about this. And it's gotten from bad to worse. And then what happened with the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, that was John Wilkes Booth was a Jesuit. He was assassinated by the Jesuits. Why was he assassinated?
For
he
the
was
greenback.
assassinated. That's right. These bankers didn't want the United States to have a strong currency. And if you read the Constitution, what it says about currencies, first of all, it says that the states have the right to declare gold and silver as legal tender. Some of the states have done this. All of the states desperately need to do this right away. What I see as the best thing, I don't think we should have legal tender laws. Why should we prevent people from accepting currencies that they think are valid? So this is for one reason. It's to protect the bankers
Right.
that want to charge interest on their debt, on the paper that they're
Right.
issuing. So we shouldn't have legal tender laws. I'll tell you, as an economist, one of the things I would like for people to start doing right off the bat, and you don't have to wait for anybody to do it, and the areas that have done this don't experience any unemployment. What you do is you create a local currency. Some people call it a time bank. Anybody who spends money in the community by donating their services is given a chit. You can decide what kind of a chit it is, and you can use that chit so you can go to your local baker. If you're a person, say the local butcher, donates their time or donates their services, they agree on what it's worth. With the chit, they can go to another local service provider. And you can see how to construct this. There are a number of examples for this. And one of the things that you can do to have this really work is you can say that if you get this chit, but you don't spend it in a month, it's worth that much less. So that way it circulates quickly.
Right.
And when you have that, there's a lot of ways to stimulate the local economy. This is a very wonderful thing. So that's one of the things you can do with currency. People have been asking me, what about Bitcoins? I started out being enthusiastic about Bitcoins. And then, the thing about being a whistleblower who's got a comment page, by the way, you can send me an email by going on my website, which is KAHUDES.net. Anyway, somebody wrote in to tell me about Bitcoins, which is there's a downside to the Bitcoins, which is, first of all, they were probably invented either by DARPA. I forget what that stands for, but it's the
Evil.
defense industry that invented it, and then I think it was J.P. Morgan that refined it. And anyway, the thing about Bitcoins is what happens if you don't, you lose the password. You've lost your money. So I don't think you want to put a lot of money in there unless, some people say it's a good investment, but with that kind of an antecedent, I would have to be a little hesitant. The reason why I was in favor of Bitcoin is that if you've got a currency which is vulnerable like fiat currencies, you want to have as much choice as you can, and Bitcoin presents a choice. So in other words, my advice on Bitcoins is use it for payment, but don't use it as a bank account because it's not so secure if you happen to lose your password or get locked out.
I'd like to see all the states regulate their own money myself. If every state coined its own money, I think we'd be better off.
Well, just think about it. You'd have to be very able to make trading on a national basis. So you don't want to break the strength of a large market down into little pieces. I think you want to leave choice, but you also want to have something that's going to unify the economy as well. You want a unified economy.
Right.
You want the best of both worlds, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you certainly, I think we would want to have states have their own state banks, which is what North Dakota has. Yeah.
State banks. Okay, I could go with that. Is there anything else you'd like to, bring out to the audience? One of the reasons we brought you here was to get as much information out as possible. So.
Well, maybe we can give Anthony a little bit of time to talk about what it's like to be a whistleblower that's suffered from retaliation.
Well, I think, what has happened to me since I left the bank is not something that, one can really explain, because when I say can explain, in the sense that it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And this is where my concern is, and for other people who may have experienced things like that or different things, I think there has to be some recognition, that there may be a connection to, work that you have done before, at the bank or so on. But the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, you really don't know, and it's hard to make that physical connection. But for someone, or as I said, for my records to be altered, the university records are under the control of the Board of Trustees of Columbia University. And they have responsibility to maintain your confidentiality and to maintain your records when you are, when you graduate from a prestigious school such as that. And for that to be violated, and for you to be told that it was an alteration, not even an error, kind of, sends the chills up your spine. Who could have done this? Why? And for what purpose? And how was it done? Those questions I have no answers to. And then during that entire period where you would send out thousands and thousands of resumes and applications, because it's so easy in today's electronic world to apply in, then you realize that this is really based upon the research I've done, tied into a much greater system. In other words, the information goes from Columbia Registrar to National Student Clearinghouse. And National Student Clearinghouse now takes that information on your degree and sends it out to all the background check agencies, all the recruitment firms, and even to employers and people like ChoicePoint, who can now create a profile of you and say whether or not you're an impersonation risk, for example. So you have purveyors of information out there who are telling corporate America who you are. And the thing is, you do not have access to this information because you're not paying the subscription fee into ChoicePoint or any of these other agencies to see what they're reporting on you. The problem even goes back beyond that. So what I'm basically trying to say is that you can be you can be looking for a job and can't find it because of misinformation that's being put out there on you, but you yourself don't know it. It's almost hidden from you. And it was really by chance, it's really by accident that I found out. Otherwise, even to this day, I would not know. See? Unless you go back, you always have to go back to source and verify things at source. And how many people after they graduate in an institution write back to the institution and say, send me a copy of my transcript so I can see that my social security number on it is correct? Very few people do that. And I was one of those people who didn't think that was necessary, so I never did it. And then, when I had the problem and found out that this is what happened, I contacted an attorney and he says, go straight to the university and get a copy of your transcript. And I rushed down there, got my transcript, and I looked at it, wrong social security number. So that has been the drama that has occurred since I left the bank in 2001. And so I've gotten involved into other things, but my core profession, my core credentials and skills have been compromised. My identity has been compromised. How I'm being categorized out there, I have no idea.
He's been robbed of his career.
Yeah.
And the way I started the program, I started out by saying that our Chief Justice refused to recognize a decision of 188 ministers of finance, and the executive chair of the Judicial Conference refused again just before the meeting of those 188 ministers. And at the meeting, after I was admitted by the ministers of finance, I was locked out by it turned out it was the chair of the Secret Service, because they said that they were in charge of the meeting. And then what happened was the commander of the 2nd Precinct, Commander Michael Reese, I went to him and I said, this is illegal. You don't want to be sending this signal to 188 ministers of finance. In the first place, they're going to move the headquarters of the World Bank from Washington. We won't even have the World Bank there anymore. That's the biggest employer. We don't want this. And yet they were powerless. They were powerless to fix it. Our credit rating as a country is going to go down. How can we sit back and let this corruption just wash over us and change the greatness of this country to a third-rate country? Obviously, we can't. And there are more stories that can be told. But, it's just, it's mind-boggling. I didn't want to believe that any of this was possible. But I'm assuring you, yes, it's all true. You can see the documentation. And we can't, and we must know neighbors that have lost their houses through this irregularity. And, of course, it turns out that the judges, when a federal judge takes their oath of office, they're not taking it as a judge in a common law court, which is what we thought we were entitled to in this country. No, they're there heading some kind of it's a charade. It's not a real court. It's a court of admiralty. When we go into the court, we're treated like vessels.
Right.
How can this be? How can we sit back and allow this to continue? Obviously, we can't. This has got to end, and it has to end before it's too late. And we do we do have a finite period of time because, as I was explaining, the gold traders are warning us that our currency is very close to collapse. And what the bankers want is they want us, at first they were saying they wanted to have something called special drawing rights. Then they said they wanted ameros. They're not even telling us what they have in mind for us. But they know that they're desperate, and they're actually in a race. They're in a race because enough of us know what's going on, and all we have to do is make it very clear to our allies that that is the case. And we need to make it clear to our governors and to our county executives and sheriffs. We shouldn't forget the sheriffs. There's a group of constitutional sheriffs, our attorneys general. All of these layers of government know about this because the World Bank whistleblowers have been really after them, telling them, what are you doing? It was only relatively recently that, there's a group that's known that we've had two constitutions. How can we be sitting here and say with a straight face, we have two constitutions? This is totally unacceptable. How can these bankers think that we're going to accept that? Of course we're not going to accept that. So what has to happen is that we simply have to, those of us that know what's going on, have got to let enough other people know in a very kind way because, this is a rude awakening, especially if you're hearing it all for the first time. This is a very rude awakening. But, hey, that's where we are. It's better, there's a saying, which is, if I don't know it, it won't harm me. It's just the opposite.
Not
what
true.
You don't know doesn't harm you. No, it's just the opposite.
Not true for sure. We've actually, me and Paula have done quite a few shows on almost all the subjects that you've talked on. We've talked about how they have two constitutions. We've talked about how the corruption with the judges, until we get, in my opinion again, and lots of other people's, until we get the courts back in line and we have honest courts, I don't see much change coming because if we, if the corruption goes to the courts and you try to come to the courts to fix the corruption, well then the judges it's in their best interest to protect the corruption because they're part of it, and that's a big problem. And right now I do many shows. Our prisons are full. They're treating people as if they're chattel. They make money off them. There's a thing called court registry investment system. I don't know if you know about that, but when they put money behind people, behind your birth certificate, there's money backing you, and when they put you in jail, they can tap into that money that most people don't even know exists. Actually, it's not money; it's credit. Right? Most people don't know. So when a judge puts somebody in jail, that judge gets some of that money in his retirement fund. So since he's getting money in his retirement fund when he puts someone in jail, it's not likely that he's going to find someone not guilty. And that's why our prisons are overcrowded in this country. So many of our, nonviolent. If there's no victim, there should be no crime.
Joe, up on my website, I have a link to a statement from a retired judge that has forms to fill out if you want to get some of that money back. You declare bankruptcy, and you can get some of that money back.
Yeah.
So and by the way,
I'm more interested in freeing all the people that are in jail. So many Americans in this country are in jail, and there's no victim. If there's no victim, there's no crime. And why are our prisons so full of people? Because they're profiting from it. And that's got to stop.
That's got to stop.
That's got to stop. Go ahead. I'll leave it open to you again. I could listen to you all day.
Well, it's just that we've documented this so thoroughly that it shouldn't be that difficult for you to convince your family and your neighbors what's really what.
Yeah. You people out there in television land have to become active, first of all, get educated. Secondly, demand that the corrupt judges, the corrupt politicians, the corrupt bankers. We've got to get them out because it's time for honesty in America. And until we have honesty and until we have justice, true justice in our courts, we're all in trouble in this country. And if you want to go in and try to fight repossession of your home, if the courts are not honest, if the courts are corrupt, then there's no chance for you to win. If you're being charged with a crime with no victim, and the judge is going to get money in his paycheck for putting you in jail, well, then there's no chance for you to get justice or a fair trial. So, American people, you people out there in television land, have to become active, have to become educated, and that's why we bring you the people that we bring you, because we want you to have the knowledge that you're not getting from the mainstream media. I'll leave it to you again.
Well, it's just when you add up this whole recipe, it's just incredible. But I guess the part that I'm bringing to this, what can I say? How do you want to describe this? To this drama, it really is a drama, is the fact that we're not acting alone, and all of the other countries of the world are cheering us on. They're counting on us. And don't forget, we're the ones that have not surrendered our firearms. I'm not saying that it's going to come to that. I'm saying just the opposite, because when you look at this this power transition model, it shows that we absolutely have the coalition. I'll tell you how I know we have the coalition. Syria didn't happen. I don't know if you want me to go into some. Oh, I'll tell you about one. There's a group called Able Danger. This is there's a fellow Field McConnell and David Hawkins. They know all about aircraft drones, and so they were actually working to prevent terrorist attacks on the United States. And when September 11th, 2001 happened, they knew right off the bat that this was yes, absolutely, this that this was not what we were told it was. Okay, so and they've been very, very active in documenting all kinds of what you call false flag events. These are theatrics to get people frightened and to make them feel powerless.
And to pump them up to go to war.
Yes, all of the above. In any event, because they're also a network of whistleblowers. So we connected, and there was going to be a false flag event. They were going to, in October, they were going to have all of the members of Congress get on 3 military aircraft and fly to Florida for a funeral of a member of Congress. So Field McConnell and I warned Congress. What he said was, there are a number of things that could happen to these military aircraft. They might fly to Fort Leavenworth instead of Florida, and we might let all of the members of Congress go to jail. He said they might fly to Guantanamo Bay. Or worse yet, they might not even get anywhere. They might just crash. And so instead of all of the members of Congress getting on these aircraft, it was just 30. So we averted that. So there are all kinds of things that are not happening the way this group, this group is used to just by edict getting what it wants. Well, it's not getting what it wants anymore. They thought that they were going to get a one world currency, but the BRICS countries prevented that. So you see that this coalition is really there, and it's really active, and we are taking back this country. We absolutely are. It's a lot different. I mean, who would have thought Syria was the first non-war. The bankers wanted it, they didn't get it. Same thing happened with Iran. Why is it that Iran didn't? Because after they couldn't get their war in Syria, they were going to get it in Iran. That didn't happen either. And now what's going on, actually, is, there's this fourth credit rating agency that was set up by Russia and China and some commercial companies. Well, if the United States doesn't get its act together, guess what's going to happen to our credit rating? So, and that's why the Democrats and Republicans all of a sudden were able to find their way to get past this upcoming budget issue. So we're living in a different world, folks. You don't have to feel intimidated. You don't, because the coalition is there. Who is the coalition? It's our allies. It's 188 ministers of finance. It's those executives, those county executives that know that people are writing them and telling them that we expect a different kind of a country. We expect one that works. We don't expect one that erases academic records. I mean, that's preposterous.
Yeah. And yeah, I see that the rest of the world is waiting for the American people to wake up and get our government in line. And I think it is up to us, the American people, to straighten out the mess that we've allowed to happen in our country and bring our country back into rule of law, like Karen has said. We need law in this country, but we need law and order that's equal. We can't have guys on top that the law doesn't affect at all. The bankers have gotten away with so much stuff, and Congress has allowed that to happen. We need the people out there to start holding the politicians' feet to the fire to bring back the rule of law in this country. We're coming down to the last couple of minutes. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, we have a perfect opportunity to do that, because the people who wrote our Constitution wrote an Article 5 that said that when 2/3 of the state legislatures ask for a constitutional convention, there shall be a constitutional convention. And guess what? We hit 2/3 back in 1929. We haven't had our constitutional convention yet. And at that convention, obviously the bankers are going to want to game the convention. But if you look at what happened in Iceland, they know how to do it. And we have to, the citizens have got to watch and hold their state legislatures to account so that we have, they're already at it. They're already trying to draw up crooked rules. We're not going to have a crooked constitutional conference.
Yeah.
The convention is going to be the way we want it to be.
Well, we have 1 minute left. If the last word, do you want to have a last word? We got 1 minute left.
Well, I have a website, easconsult.com.
Repeat that again.
EAS, Edward Anthony Shields Consult, CONSULT.com. And also I could be contacted through my email address, edward@easconsult.com. So I'll just provide that information, yeah.
Okay, and we're going to say, once again, this is Joe Barton for Paula Gloria and Further Down the Rabbit Hole. And we want to thank all our guests, Karen and Anthony, for being here. And we're going to bring you more, as much as we can, to educate you people out there. So we're going to say have a good night, and we'll see you again next time.